Now, I want to backtrack a little bit. How was your licensure process coming over from the Dominican Republic? I know I've heard stories of other foreign architects that try to transfer education and it doesn't transfer well, and then they just end up going back for their master's degree so they can sit for the exams. How was it coming from the Dominican Republic for you?
So I think there is a lot of misconception in that part because a
Hmm.
lot of people, and there's nothing wrong if you really want to go back to school. Like I know, for example, one person I can mention is Graciela. Her story, she felt she wanted to, she felt she needed to just kind of take that extra master because it gave her confidence, and she felt she needed it. But I think a lot of people, um, go that route because they think it's required. And the
Hmm.
difference, the reason why I point out Graciela's story is because I think she knew she didn't needed it, but she kind of personally wanted to do that. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? And But I think most of the time is the lack of understanding on what is really needed in that process. This happened to me in my own process because I started with what we call the standard path for immigrants, which is like you get your your education evaluated with an ESA through NAP. And then when that's approved, then you start, like, you report all your hours of experience that are required, either partly international or not. And then you take the exams. It's like those the three steps, pretty much the
Yeah.
basic three steps, right? Education, experience, and exams. But I, as a foreign architect who had hold a license in a foreign country, I could have opted for the foreign architect path, which is different, it's shorter, it's faster. I don't have to get my education evaluated and all that kind of stuff. And what happened was I started in the standard pass first, and I made a lot of mistakes with that because translating all the paperwork for evaluating your education was like super long, expensive, and all that kind of stuff. Like I got quotes, and like the cheapest quotes for translated the book for the ESA was like almost $10,000. Actually, I think a
Wow.
little over $10,000. And the problem with that is it's not just your transcripts that they evaluate. Every class that you take, it has like this description and objective and all that. It's like a
Hmm.
1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages sometimes of like a same program.
Yeah.
That's what they want for every class. So if your bachelor's and master's were like super long like mine, I had like 400, 500 pages to translate. Just think about
Yeah.
that craziness. Collecting them, because like most of the time these schools don't have all the paperwork like together and like ready for you to submit, and then it's not translated, and it's just mess. So then after I was about to register for a college, because what happened was I got my EASE evaluation back with a deficiency of six. It was 6 credits, 3 credits for English, which I could just take an exam, comprehension exam or something, and
Hmm.
3 credits for codes and regulations. But they told me to take the codes and regulations as a master degree class because I was trying to um, accredit my master's too, not just the bachelor's. So
Yeah.
that 3 credits needed to be a master's. So just that class for one semester was like over $3,000. And I'm like,
Hmm.
it's just like, I'm thinking of the money and the time, like you have to go back to school and, take exams and all. I don't know.
Yeah.
When I was given the opportunity of taking the foreign architect path, and they were like, you don't need the ESA for that. I'm like, you know what? I don't care that I already spent this part of the money. I just don't want to have to go back to school and paying $3,000 more. Like I was just done. And I just switched, and then like they sent 2 forms to one to my board of architecture in the DR, and one to my college. And then when those forms were back to them, I was approved. And then I reported my hours. I completed the hours that are required to be under an architect in the States, which is halfway
Hmm.
there, and the other halfway I reported from the DR. And as I was in this job that I worked for years, I kind of completed those hours as I was taking the exams, and that was it. But it was really a rocky process because of the lack of knowledge. And I want to clarify. a lot of people say like, nobody knows anything, nobody tells you anything. To be honest, all of the information is out there. The problem that I feel that there is like a gap between sometimes between NCARB and NAP and some of the boards of
Hmm.
architecture on different states, like the New York state is pretty kind of hard to deal with sometimes. New Jersey is pretty complicated for some people too, and I'm talking complicated for foreign architects especially.
Yeah.
It's because sometimes the way things are written doesn't translate to us. And the
Hmm.
best example I can give you is like the reason why I started in the standard path instead of the foreign architect path was in the my NCARB record, there is a tab that everybody has. It says registrations. And I didn't know what that was. Like registration to what? To like an event? Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna register for an event? Like I didn't understand what that was. I didn't understand that that meant a license. And I never put that I had a license in the Dominican Republic because I didn't understand that that's what they were asking for. Now, when I was on the phone talking to somebody, I went out talking to this NCARB customer service representative, and I said, and I have my license in there. And she's like, I don't see that in your record. Why don't you put it? I'm like, I don't know where to put it. And she's like, in the registration tab. That's what registration means. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that's what it meant. And I found that a lot of immigrant architects and immigrant professionals, emerging professionals, experience the same. They don't know
Hmm.
that registration means license, and they don't put it there because they didn't know, and they waste a lot of time going through other path versus the foreign architect path, which will apply to them if they hold that license. So my point is, it was just kind of like rocky. Like I started the process end of 2015, kind of like trying to start like gathering information. Really formally, I started early 2016, and I got my license 2019 because I started taking the exam. It took me about a year and 8 months taking all of the exams and passed them. But like the first initial time of like figuring things out and translating and all that, it was just like so confusing for me. And I know one of the questions that you probably want to address is like how the foreign architect group that I started. And this is the reason why. It's because I was so frustrated with my own process and all the money and all the
All the
time that I
time. Yeah.
yes, it's money. Time is money and money is money, and I wasted both. So just like think about the repercussions on like my personal, family time and other things I wanted to do. So that's why I started that group because I'm like, I'm tired of like not having kind of like for people like me enough guidance. And again, like I might not know the specific answer to a specific case, but I'm hoping that in that group someone else can chime in and help too.
Yeah, definitely. Because I more know the standard process, and like even people in the States understanding you need to go to a university that is accredited is
Mhm.
hard for people to even realize you need to do that. So even people in the States don't get an approved education, and then they just give up on their licensure path
Mhm.
altogether because they find that's the only one, and they don't want to go back to school because it's a lot of time and money.
Yeah.
But
And
the
I and this is funny that you mentioned that because this is one of the things that happened to me when I came in 2015. I met a person, and I mentioned this actually in my book, where someone told me in the very beginning of my process, someone told me, oh, don't even try to get your license. Like your education and your experience here is like worth nothing. And like I know so many people that even went to school here and have never gotten their license. Like don't even try, like you're not gonna get it. And I remember coming back home like heartbroken, sorry, and just kind of
Mhm.
like crying and feeling like so defeated. I'm like, man, I fell in love with this guy, and we decided coming to the States thinking I was just gonna transfer my business here. And like now it's like I cannot even call myself an architect. I'm not gonna be able to get the license. Like, can I even practice architectural law? Like, what am I gonna end up working in something else, like in a restaurant or something because of this life personal life decision I made. nothing wrong with working in a restaurant, but it's not what I wanted.
Yeah,
You know?
especially when you owned your own practice down in the
Yes.
Dominican Republic and then coming over, it's taking a back step and then
Yeah.
resetting, and that takes time.
Yeah, and my point is the same way. The reason why I mentioned this story is because the same way that happened to me, it happens to a lot of people. Because one of the things that most of immigrant architects experience is that they come to the States and there's no one else around them, no friends or family that work in architecture that can guide them through the correct process. So it takes a little bit for most of them to actually figure things out, because most of the time nobody around you knows anything about this one career.
Check out the full discussion from this bite of advice here. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on more mentorDINO content.